If I can just take you onto a massive story that's happening right now, and I know you've got a lot of thoughts and a lot of views on this one. Recently there was a picture put out in a PR campaign by All Living London, All One London. And it was a white mum, a white dad and two white children walking down along the Thames with the London Eye in the background. Mr. Khan has incredibly said that this does not reflect his London. What are your thoughts on this?
It makes me sick. It makes me angry and sick. I saw that in The Independent, funny enough. Even The Independent reported it, which is extraordinary. But I saw that and it makes me sick. And this is where we're going as a country. I mean, you've raised a massive question. So we as a country now virtually universally, through legal pressure and regulatory pressure, practice something called diversity and inclusion. Some people include the word equality. All three words are inappropriate in order to describe what diversity, equality and inclusion is. Diversity, equality and inclusion is neither diverse nor does it equalise, and it certainly isn't inclusive. It divides and it's exclusive. What they say about diversity and inclusion is that it promotes the interests of ethnic minorities, those people who have minority sexual preferences, those who identify as another gender, or they're trans, or they're gay, or they're lesbians. And it's the promotion of these minority interests. And prima facie, that's all well and good. But in order, ostensibly, to promote their interests, what's happening is that the majority's interests are being demoted to ostensibly, and I use the word ostensibly because I don't think it ultimately promotes anyone's interests. What it's doing is saying to those people who've worked hard, who happen to be white, who happen to be heterosexual, but nevertheless deserve the job for which they've applied, that actually they're not worthy. Living in London as a white, tax-paying, legitimate member of the community, you're not worthy because you're not of an ethnic minority, because you're not trans, because you're not gay. You don't have one of those badges that entitles you to being promoted, and therefore you are demoted. And that is racism. That is prejudice. So diversity, equality and inclusion is the promotion of racism. It's the promotion of division. It's the embedding in society of barriers between people purely on account of their colour. And by the way, it doesn't promote ethnic minorities. I'm half Pakistani. Do you think I feel good about people telling me you need to be protected and promoted, Ben, because you don't possess the qualities required to promote yourself in society? I reject that. I'm every bit as good as anyone else in society. And my response is, we've got to, funny enough, go back in time to find a position in the United Kingdom where we were much more at ease with each other before diversity, equality and inclusion arose. And that time, as far as I'm concerned, is when I was being brought up in the 70s and 80s, when I was relentlessly and correctly told everyone is equal. Don't care what your colour is, don't care what your sexual preference is, don't care how you identify, what clothes you wear, how you colour your hair, what age you are.
Sure.
Couldn't care less. What I care about is, what is it that you're seeking to do, and are you well suited to doing it? And most particularly, if I'm employing someone in my company, I want to make sure they possess the merits required to discharge that job, at least to the level I want, and ideally to the best level possible. That's what we want. We want a society based on equal opportunities, not promoted because you're an ethnic minority, a society of equal opportunities where meritocracy and hard work is rewarded. A society of aspiration, not a society of dependency created through some false concept of diversity, equality and inclusion. And I'm afraid what we've done is infantilize minority groups by promoting this ideology, and we are seriously damaging the economy as a result of it. And for Sadiq Khan to come out and effectively vilify white people is nothing short of racism. And the Labour Party has form for racism. You know, anti-Semitic, you know, there's been a lot of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer needs to come out and protect white people just as any other ethnic, any other ethnicity would need protection.
But he never does, Ben.
He never does. And so nowadays, notwithstanding the Equalities Act, which states that all of us should be blind to age, sex, colour and so on, nowadays, actually, the Equalities Act works to the detriment of white people. And you know who is most prejudiced against? The one individual that is most prejudiced against is a white, middle-aged, heterosexual male. You don't possess any of the minority.
That's right. You're unprotected.
You're unprotected.
Yes.
You have to go about in a sea of prejudice against you.
Absolutely. So what many people are saying, Ben, that this is a racist act by the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, because if let's switch this around, this is a white MP who sees 4 black people, black father, black mother, 2 black children, and says this doesn't represent my London. How quickly do you think that person's backside would be out?
Absolutely. They'd be out in 2 seconds flat. And there's the evidence that we live... People used to say to me, and I used to deny it, they used to say we live at the United Kingdom's institutionally racist. Yes. And I used to say, you're talking rubbish. I've never experienced racism in my life. But I'm afraid the United Kingdom is now institutionally racist. It's institutionally racist against white people. And it needs to be said, and it needs to be stopped.
And it's funny, we were talking earlier on before how we said that you're from Pakistan, upbringing, you... not in my eyes or your eyes would put yourself in any other category other than you're British and you're a member of this country. But because of the ideology of the BAME, a lot of people find that insulting. That you
I
want
am
to
totally insulted by it.
Put me in that category. Yeah. How dare you label
Absolutely.
me with all that? And as you correctly say, do you feel that Sadiq Khan and people like him now feel that white families and white people are an easy target that you can say anything about without any reproach?
Absolutely.
Without any reproach.
Absolutely, Marcus. And it's going to get worse for white people. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
It's getting embedded. White people, there's a whole class of white people who hate their own colour.
Yes.
You know, I'm sure you've heard of critical race theory and unconscious bias and all of that.
Yes.
You know, this notion that if you're white and you don't recognise that you're automatically privileged by being white is effectively pillaring you before you even got out of the stalls. You know, you're white. You're born with prejudice. You're born with privilege and prejudice.
Sure.
It's utter nonsense. By the way, I just want to say, I'm half Pakistani.
Yes.
My dad's from Punjab. My mother is from Hounslow, born in Hounslow just before the outbreak of war. And her father... So my mum was blonde, she's now grey. But she's blonde, blue-eyed, and my father is slightly darker than I am.
Sure.
So I'm really a mix. And I'm British through and through. I've always been British.
Yeah.
I think of myself as British. And I would die on a hill for this country.
Yes.
And that's what we want people in this country to feel, that they would die on a hill for this country. It is the greatest country on the planet. We have the greatest freedoms. Such great freedom we have, that it's come to be abused by a small minority of people, an ever-increasing minority of people that include Sadiq Khan.
Yes. Well, I think he's a reflection of the Labour Party, but we need people like you in politics from the Reform Party, which you're proudly a part of, that seem to have replaced the Conservatives as Britain's Conservatives. Many of our viewers and contributors say to Herd Immunity News that you couldn't get a cigarette paper between Labour and the Tories. There's nothing really between them. They're both into net zero. They're both
into diversity,
open borders,
open borders
Britain. The Conservatives have let Northern Ireland be annexed off and lost. I know you've done a lot of amazing work on that. I mean, just before we finish up, Ben, where are we at with the annexation of Northern Ireland